Well, since its inception, the city of Tulsa has continued to implement PLANiTULSA comprehensive plan in many, many ways. First of all, Planning Commission has started to incorporate the maps as recommended as part of the PLANiTULSA plan. The city is in the process of adopting bridge amendments to allow us to meet the intent of PLANiTULSA. We've hired a planning director. I might say we have hired a world-class planning director. She has been involved since day one in this entire process. And I believe that anybody that has spent any time with her understands her dedication, her capability, and her understanding of the needs of this community, but especially the planning process. And we're very fortunate to have her here. We're adopting a complete streets policy. We're selecting consultants to update our city zoning code. As you know, this has not been in, I believe, 30+ years. It's a big process and long overdue. And as of tonight, we're officially kicking off the small area plans. As you know, small area plans is somewhat of a misnomer. Doesn't matter on the size, but it's, in any case, they're big deals because they do so much for a particular area. It might be small in name and small possibly in size relative to the size of the city boundary, but it's a big, big deal. You can ask anybody that's involved in the process, especially in the affected areas, and they're glad to see it happen. The small area planning process is one of 6 key strategies that have been recommended in the city's comprehensive plan. And tonight's public kickoff will begin the beginning of probably an approximate 18-month process for the 3 small area plans. The 36th Street North Corridor, which is located in District 1, is an area that's been long overdue for such recognition and such capability and such planning. In southwest Tulsa, in the vicinity of the Tulsa Hills Retail Shopping Center in District 2, a very large area. The Midtown, District 4, the Utica Avenue corridor study takes into consideration 2 hospitals, medical facilities, retail, single-family housing. It's a pretty significant task. Well, Don Warrick will go into more detail on these in a few minutes, but first I'd like to call upon the various city councilors that represent these districts for their comments and their remarks.
I am excited. I'm excited for Tulsa. I'm excited about PLANiTULSA, and I'm excited for District 1 because, like the mayor said, there's so many things in District 1 that we need that's overdue. How you doing, Maria Barnes? I had to give a shout out to Maria. She's one of my old colleagues. I, first of all, like to thank everybody who worked on PLANiTULSA. That was a long process. We got it to this point. And I also would like to thank everybody that has already worked on the North 36th Street North Corridor plan, mainly those people that worked on the Northland plan. I just want to applaud you and say to you that this is really big, and thanks for the work that you've already done. We hope that you're going to continue to roll your sleeves up and help us complete that whole corridor, because that's what it's all about. And I am excited. I am excited. I am excited. I knew one day that this day would come. I just didn't know when, but I had confidence and faith that it would come. And I'm standing here today because of a lot of people made this happen. Not just a few that I've named, a lot of people. And I see that there's a great turnout. I know that when we talked about PLANiTULSA, there was so many people that thought that North Tulsa should be one of the first areas that gets some attention. And I just want to say to the city of Tulsa, I thank you for that. I thank you for recognizing that there's so much to do all over this city, but North Tulsa needs some special attention. And I just want to say to each and every one of you, I'm going to roll my sleeves up. I'm going to do all I can to make sure that we get to the finish line and we get to the end of PLANiTULSA. This city is going to be such a special place, and it's going to be what I always like to say, the tale of one city and not the tale of two. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for such a wonderful turnout and all the people of District 2 that are here, because everything is going so fast in District 2 with Tulsa Hills and growth and development that we need to slow down and get a plan started before we're overwhelmed and have growth that is kind of unexpected to our district. And we have a great number of people here tonight, and I want to thank them all for attending. I will be at all the meetings. I know we're going to work hard. We only have 18 months, and we're between 61st West Avenue to 91st West Avenue, from Elwood at Tulsa Hills west to South 33rd West Avenue. And that takes in a lot of areas, so we've got a lot of hard work to do, but I know the people in this audience are capable of doing that, or they wouldn't be here tonight. And as a group in Southwest and South Tulsa, we are strong, we get a lot accomplished, and we're going to get this done, and it's going to be the way the residents of the area and the businesses want it. And thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Anybody that knows Blake Ewing knows that I cannot fill his shoes. I represent District 6, but actually I represent all of Tulsa. I'm really here as a new counselor to kind of figure out what all these small area planning groups are all about and try to figure out what we can do in District 6 to tap into some of that. So really, it's just exciting to me to see all the participation, all the excitement, and I'm here primarily to learn on how these small area plans are going to come together and help all of Tulsa. Thank you.
Well, I would like to just quickly echo Councilor Henderson's remarks about this being one Tulsa, because we all understand very well that whatever happens in a particular part of Tulsa affects the entirety of the city. Being able to put together these 3 area plans at one time is quite a feat. But we have a department, our city planning department, that is very, very capable of pulling on this task over the next year and a half. Leading that effort is our new city planner, Don Warrick. She graduated from the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, Arkansas. She then went to school. We have an Arkansas fan here. There's one. There's 2, actually. She then worked for the city government in Fayetteville for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years? 9.5, I was close. She then was hired by the city of Louisville, Kentucky, and worked there for a similar amount of time, and we were able to attract her to come back home, at least in the neighborhood. So we're very fortunate to have her here.
My role this evening is to give you all an overview of the small area planning process, talk a little bit about how this process is tied into PLANiTULSA, our comprehensive plan. As most of you know, many of you were involved in PLANiTULSA. It was an open and transparent, very engaged participatory effort to create the comprehensive plan for the city of Tulsa. And that planning process resulted in a successful plan adoption, which established overriding policies for the built environment of our community. It provides guidance for prioritizing economic development and planning efforts, and likewise is intended to influence funding decisions and how we make the best use of resources through activities such as public-private partnership. The strategic plan takes the comprehensive plan and puts it into action, with 6 specific strategies and action steps necessary to accomplish each one. The strategic plan for PLANiTULSA serves as a basis for the work programs of the divisions within the Planning and Economic Development Department. The 6 strategies orbiting around PLANiTULSA are those that are outlined in the strategic plan, and they include to update the zoning and subdivision codes, realign planning functions, develop a new transportation strategy, implement prototypes and demonstration projects, create a new redevelopment strategy, and conduct neighborhood and small area planning in targeted areas. So this is the specific strategy that we're embarking on this evening and focusing on for the next 18 months specifically. The comprehensive plan calls small area planning a partnership between the city and its citizens, residents, builders and developers, institutions, and other government entities. This process provides an opportunity to take the next logical step in the planning process for our community, to develop with input and collaboration from key stakeholders, specific strategies that are tailored to the individual characteristics of smaller areas within the city. The 3 areas that were chosen for our first small area plans under this new program are represented by those of you in attendance tonight, by your council representatives and by the entire city council who are in support of this planning effort. While the comprehensive plan gives us general direction and guidance, small area plans are the appropriate way to apply those policies at a finer level of detail with regard to the unique needs of specific areas within the community. So this process will enhance and clarify the application of PLANiTULSA in these specific areas. It will not be a platform to undo or undercut the direction of the policy guidance provided in PLANiTULSA, but specifically to explore the best ways to apply those big ideas in more discrete areas of the community, and with regard to the individual needs of each of the selected plan areas. The resulting plans will be presented to the Tulsa Metro Area Planning Commission, excuse me, I'm a little tongue-tied, and the City Council as amendments to the comprehensive plan. They'll be incorporated into the master document and provide clarification for programs, policies, and implementation steps for these specific areas. As with the comprehensive plan itself, each small area plan will adhere to these guiding principles. Each plan will address these principles as they pertain to the unique place in the community represented by that planning effort. So each plan will talk specifically about and address issues related to the economy, transportation, community and housing, equity and opportunity, the environment, and the planning process. This graphic shows the initial 3 plan areas for this program. Specific boundaries for each of these plans have been scrutinized by the councilors in the representing districts. A resolution has been prepared for consideration by the full City Council in the coming weeks that will formally establish the plan area boundaries. There's a unique element to the plan area boundary within the Utica Midtown corridor, and that is that we have determined that it's appropriate to work in that plan area, in the development of that plan area, by addressing it as 2 sub-areas, north of the Broken Arrow Expressway and south. There are a few reasons for this approach, and the first is that the characteristics of this corridor really are different. The context of the neighborhoods is different north of the expressway and south, and so that's really the first purpose for dividing. And the second is that the provision of additional resources for this plan area has been prompted by the provision of consulting teams hired by each of the 2 medical centers. These are really large institutional users within the corridor. They have specific planning needs of their own, and they have engaged planning consultants to assist them in this process and also to work for other reasons to support the institutions and their future planning efforts. So the comprehensive plan specifically recognizes that city resources will not always be sufficient to conduct all of the planning activities that we want or need to conduct at any given time. So we believe that this collaboration will enable us to best allocate our resources where they're needed most for the success of all 3 of these planning areas. As we establish the small area planning program through these initial plan efforts, we'll be refining and defining the best way to coordinate this type of process. We anticipate this will be the beginning of an ongoing core program of our Planning and Economic Development Department for years to come. The process that will be employed for each of these small area plans will be consistent. While we will follow generally the same steps, and we of course have a finite timeline for each of these plans, as we get into each of them, they will be tailored to the needs of the specific planning areas. The steps generally in the planning process include first to define the boundary. We anticipate and recommend that boundaries will be determined with input and concurrence of the TMAPC as well as the City Council for these plans and for future small area plans. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, we will seek approval of a resolution in the coming weeks to confirm the boundaries of each of these plan areas. It's always difficult to draw a line because there's always a question as to whether or not that's exactly the right location for the establishment of a boundary. I think it's also important to understand that a line on a map is not a wall that's insurmountable. It is a line on a map that gives us a basis for initiating a discussion, for developing recommendations. So when we look at how to establish a plan area boundary, we go back to the guidance that's provided within the comprehensive plan, and it states that we will generally look at areas where significant change is expected or where development in question would be at a scale of a new neighborhood and include multiple landowners. It's a pretty general guideline, but it does give us a starting point, and that's where we've got to start. The second step in the planning process is community participation. And depending upon the size and complexity, several different methods will be employed. The first will always be a consistent element of any small area planning process, and that is the establishment of a citizen advisory team. The citizen advisory team is a group of informed stakeholders. They could include landowners, residents, business owners, people who have a vested interest within the plan area, and they will be basically providing assistance to the planning staff in going through this plan process. City Councilor representing each of these small area plans has been working to help identify key stakeholders, and they will specifically invite those individuals to participate as a member of the citizen advisory teams. Keep in mind that if you are not a specific member of a citizen advisory team, it does not in any way exclude you from a planning process. Anyone in the entire city has a vested interest in what happens throughout the community. Therefore, everyone's a stakeholder. But we do anticipate the role of this team, as I said, to be of assistance to the staff, to help take information from the planning process into the neighborhoods, into the business association meetings, talking to or participating in key activities within the community and bringing feedback back to the planning process. So this is kind of our conduit for giving and taking information from the process into the neighborhoods. Staff will ask these teams to help validate the collection of data and public input throughout the plan process. We want to know that we're getting it right. We want to know that we're hearing what interested parties are telling us. We want to understand the concerns of your neighbors and yourselves. And so we're going to ask these citizen advisory teams to help us to make sure that we are getting it right. And we see this as an important give and take between staff and the neighborhoods. So we do need assistance from leaders and engaged citizens who are willing and able to serve and provide their time to this process. And there will be a time commitment, but remember that we're on a time schedule, so we know for sure that it's going to be approximately 18 months from beginning to end. Other types of public engagement will include a variety of different techniques and types of meetings or activities. Some will be used in different plan areas depending upon the issues and the needs of those plans. So you may participate in a charrette or a workshop. You may be involved in what we call a SWOT analysis, and that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. We may include communication tools such as newsletters or surveys, and possibly, very likely, open houses and full neighborhood meetings to provide input to the process as we move through the development of these plans. The next step in our planning process is assessment. Each plan area will go through an inventory and analysis. What are the existing conditions? What are the needs of each of these areas? plans will also develop a vision statement. It's important that we all form a consensus about what we want these planning areas to look like. It's what do you want to be in 10 or 20 years? What's your vision for this part of your community in the future? So that we have a way of actually defining what that looks like, because once you know where you're going, it's easier to get there. Step 5 includes a review of civic responsibilities and an understanding of the citywide context for each of these plans. Planet Tulsa is for the entire city. We have a comprehensive plan that provides guiding principles and policies for our built environment citywide. There's not a single part of this community that's left out. These plan areas are part of Planet Tulsa and will need to demonstrate how we can incorporate those guiding policies at a finer level of detail with more specific direction for these small area plans. And finally, each plan will provide recommendations for implementation. So there will be a component of each of these plans that says in order for this vision to be implemented appropriately, we feel like the following steps need to be taken. Much like Planet Tulsa's strategic plan for implementation, each of these small area plans will provide a similar type of analysis and recommendation. Each of these plans will utilize the same process that I generally described and develop a plan for adoption as an amendment to Planet Tulsa. We have a master timeline of approximately 18 months, which we will divide generally into 3 broad categories. And those include the inventory and analysis stage, the visioning, and then final draft and plan adoption. We anticipate that each of those broad categories will take approximately 6 months. Some of those activities will overlap in different areas, and so this is kind of a general overview of how we are lining out the activities related to each of the plans for development. And during the course of these planning efforts, you will become pretty familiar with the team of staff planners who will be facilitating the development of these plans with your assistance. And so at this point in time, I would love it if my small area planning team would not mind maybe coming up to the front so we can do some proper introductions. These are the folks that have already started working very hard to support this planning process and will be with us taking it through all of these steps that I've talked about. And so in front of you, you have Martha Schultz, Patrick Fox, Ed Sharp, Emily Kohler, Josh Donaldson, and Steve Sherman. These folks are going to not be dispatched as individual planners to the different plan areas. We will work as a team. Each of the planners has different skill sets. We believe that they are very complementary skill sets, and they're going to together produce wonderful plans for each of these 3 areas.